And we're back with another episode of the PCC Multiverse. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We are here every Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network. And if you cannot get a chance to listen to our show as it airs live on the Podcast Radio Network, well, that's no problem at all because you can download it anytime at your convenience on a number of different podcasting and downloading channels. Let's get that list to you out right now. Starts off with Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, podcast.com, TuneIn, Mixcloud, Overcast.fm, the ESO Network, the Tangent Bound Network, and the Gonna Geek Network as well. And it wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without a wonderful co-host. Well, or I could be the co-host and he could be the host. Doesn't matter to me. It's a team effort here at Pop Culture Cosmos. But it's the man, myth, the legend, the mad scientist mixing all those great concoctions. It's Josh Pederson of Humanican Media. How are you, my friend?
Good, man. Question. Can you listen to Pop Culture Cosmos on cassette tape?
Not as of now, but you can burn it to a cassette tape, and I don't think that would be a problem.
Okay, what about vinyl? Because that's what all the hipsters are doing right now. I feel if we really want to reach that market, we need to put things on vinyl.
Yeah, and it's pop culture. I guess we could go to it. It's an expense, so we're looking for sponsors here at Pop Culture Cosmos and Humanican Media, just so we can put stuff in on vinyl.
I'm telling you, man, vinyl, coffee shops, the hipsters will be like, hey, we liked this before it was cool. And be like, yeah, you did. You gave us some money. So here, take this.
We like money here at Pop Culture Cosmos and Humanican Media. And speaking of Humanican Media, what's going on with everything? Well, Humanican Media.
Yeah, just business as usual. We have a new Super BS coming at you this week, episode 12. I just filmed today. Topicocalypse of episode 1, part 1 is now available on podcast.com and YouTube soon, and Facebook, I'm assuming by tomorrow. Also, what about this latest episode? You can now download, and there's a lot more fun stuff coming at you. But I know there's some stuff attached to this show, and you can download as bonus episodes and whatnot.
Well, indeed.
Correct.
Well, indeed, there's going to be clips on today's show from everything going on currently in the Humanican Media universe right now. So that includes Topicocalypse. Did I get that one right?
Yeah, you did. Hey,
sweet.
That was your first try. I mean, you said it. I don't know if that counts though, because you said it like 20 times wrong before the show started. But you got it right this time, so I guess I'll give you a free pass on that.
Sweet, I'll take it. The current Super BS Gamescast that's on the air, and also as well the latest What About This with another great topic. What was again? Will everybody know out there, Josh, what the topic on What About This podcast was about for this week?
The topic was athletes and standards. Like, why do we have double standards when it comes to athletes? Like, why is it that it centers around Ray Rice, who abused his wife, or he punched her in the elevator fast food restaurant.
Why are they held to a higher regard? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. You know, we go on to talk about different players in different sports, and can we truly? Is it right that we do that? Have that kind of thing? Can you have morals in today's culture? Pretty much is what we're getting at. But it's a good episode. I actually. It's it's not one of our better ones, but it's still good. I would recommend listening to it. I did not do a great job of selling that. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. That's why there's the wonder of editing. Anyways, that's the What About This podcast available on Humanican Media. You'll be checking out. Actually, we'll be playing clips of those shows later in the broadcast at various points in time. So look forward to that indeed, and check out all of Humanican Media's stuff on their Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channels, and also all of their audio channels as well. Podbean, podcast.com, Google Play, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. So it's another great weekend. I love this part of the time of the year because it's, you get one big wannabe blockbuster after another, after another, after another. First off this month, you had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which is still doing very well with audiences. And then you had, I'm sorry to say this, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, which didn't do so well with audiences. But this week could be a new contender for the throne as Alien Covenant actually hits theaters this weekend, so we're looking out for it. Actually, Josh has already seen the film, is going to share his thoughts in a moment. But what we wanted to really delve into is film's good, the film's not so good, but the film's importance in keeping the Alien franchise alive because it's a franchise that's been going on for so many years now. It may not resonate with newer audiences like it has with the audiences from the old and from the past that are more familiar with what's considered the better versions of the Alien franchise that were made earlier in time. Maybe people that are around as far, maybe those that are frequent moviegoers these days may not have as much feel for the Alien franchise at this time. So I ask you, Josh, after seeing Alien Covenant, do you feel like there's a lot of left in the tank as far as the Alien franchise is concerned, or do you think it's time for the xenomorphs and the face huggers to go bye-bye into another galaxy far, far away?
That's an interesting question because I don't want to spoil anything. I really don't, because I want you guys to also go see this movie. But from my point of view, Prometheus, I'm probably one of the very low percentages of people that actually enjoyed Prometheus. I felt that it took the concept of Alien and kind of expanded it. It gave it like beef to it. Like they asked those philosophical questions, morality, God. It kind of turned the story in a different direction. At first I was like, this could be exciting, but we go back to Alien Covenant, and it's, while they do answer a couple questions from Prometheus, it felt like it was a step backwards. So I guess to answer your question, I think that the franchise does have some interesting places it can go still, but they need to not show us all these things that we have seen over and over and over again. Like 4 or 5 times now, we've seen aliens get blown out airlocks and ship battles and chest bursters and all that stuff's all really cool. We need more. Like if they want audiences to keep going to see these movies, they need to give them a reason to. Don't just let us watch the same movie over and over again.
Well, and what comes with that is just it just seems like it's just another horror movie as far as just try to jump scare, as far as try to get people to be on edge and suspense. But if we all know it's coming by now, roughly 30 some odd years into the franchise, then really what's there left to tell? I think a lot of people were hoping, as far as with the Alien Prometheus and Alien Covenant films, to learn more of the backstories of how it evolved, and as far as the aliens were concerned, and the whole concept of focusing more on their end of the deal as opposed to more humans looking for relocation or looking for this on this planet. It just seems like it seems like it's a never-ending cycle of when it comes to the humans in this movie, about the same type of villains, the same type of good guys and good gals, as far as the way they interacted with each other and also tried to prevent from getting killed by the aliens. But it just seems like the storylines seem to just recycle over and over again, as far as, well, they're looking for a home, or they're looking for people who are trying to build an outpost or had an outpost. And it seems to be that there's just really not much deviance in far as the overall story arc over the past some odd years. I was hoping that it would tell a deeper, enriching story about the different alien cultures itself, and maybe going more into that as opposed to just the characters itself. I know Alien Covenant tried to do that a little bit, but when it deviated from it really just very quickly and focus right back on the humans once again and their issues, whether it was because they were already possessed by an alien or because they were fighting off people who were, possessed by the alien. It just seemed to delve off always into the humans and dominate so much as far as the people, which in this series are, not Sigourney Weaver notwithstanding, are not the most important and not the most interesting part of the series.
So I agree. And like in this movie, they did kind of like recreate Sigourney Weaver through, a new character in the movie. But see, that is it kind of, I guess it irks me. But
that's what I'm saying. You're just recycling old ideas.
You're recycling the story over and over. But because with Prometheus, I liked where they were going. I wanted to see the engineers' plan. I wanted teach me about these people. Like what are they? But
it started to do it, but.
And then in Alien Covenant, I don't want to spoil it, but that's it. They give you like 20, maybe less than a minute of engineers and showing like what happened to them. And then it just goes right back to the alien story. Like from what I understand, the script got changed a bunch of times. When it was originally Prometheus 2 or whatever it was called, Paradise Lost in the beginning. But we wanted to know, like, why did the engineers want to kill us? It turns out you have to go online and listen to some Ridley Scott interviews to find out where that story was going and why they wanted to kill us. Because apparently they, they created man and they wanted to start over. So they sent an emissary down, and that emissary happened to be Jesus Christ. And then they crucified him. So that's why they wanted to go to Earth and destroy him. But, 100 years of travel through space and whatnot. But, I don't know. Like the franchise, it needs to go somewhere. While I love these movies, if they're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over, and once you see the ending of Covenant, you'll see like kind of what I'm talking about with this. But I just, there's a lot. There's still some good places it can go, but they just need to not like stop fan servicing is the thing. Like they need to just go tell a story, tell a good story that's compelling. And don't, just because fans cry about not seeing enough xenomorphs doesn't mean you have to keep showing us xenomorphs. It's the same thing, just over and over.
Do you think if they're going to keep on doing this, there's not going to be an Alien franchise much longer? Because all it takes is just one big bomb, just like last week, to have any inclination that you're going to be able to cut the series right there and then. Because the King Arthur series, unfortunately, after last week's dismal performance, anything going on for that series for Guy Ritchie and Charlie Hunnam is pretty much dead in the water. Same thing for me on the Alien franchise. If Alien Covenant does not perform this well over the next 4 weeks, it definitely could be a sign of things to come. Maybe they'll go back to it, and I think they would go back to it at some point in time, trying to resurrect the Alien series. But do you think, at least if it doesn't perform well, that the Alien franchise could be damaged for a long time to come?
Well, they're projecting opening weekend numbers to be somewhere around like 80 million or something. Like that's their target. So it'll make that. It'll make those numbers because there's still like a cult following for the series. But I will tell you that when the movie ended, this was what I heard throughout the entire theater. That ending pissed me off. Like it was unanimous. Like everybody was saying that. So, you just got to get to a point where Ridley Scott's 79 years old. So if he's got like some master plan going for this franchise, like he needs to get it out there, because once he is gone and Fox gives the director's seat to somebody else, it's not, that's when the franchise will officially be dead.
But they've given it away before. Other directors have helmed previous.
And look what happened. With the exception of James Cameron, look what happened.
All it takes is the right project and the right director.
David Fincher and I forget who directed Resurrection, but yeah, they were not. That was, from what I understand about those movies, they were completely studio controlled, and they were. I'm not going to say they were awful, but they were pretty bad.
Well, but then you have Alien Covenant and also Prometheus, which Prometheus in its case did not light the world on fire, as far as from both it garnered $400 million worldwide, which I guess warranted this sequel here. But from a critical standpoint, left a lot of people with maybe not the best feeling in the world about the franchise, but they were hoping so much more for Alien Covenant. So we'll have to wait and see what everybody's thoughts are out there. In fact, what are your thoughts out there on the Alien franchise and Alien Covenant? Please let us know your thoughts this weekend. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos and Humanica Media on Facebook, Twitter, and also, Humanica Media, Pop Culture Cosmos, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. Well, it's going to be a great episode we have here today. Got a lot of great stuff going on. I told you about those clips all coming up from Humanica Media, and also a clip from the latest Wine, Women, and Words podcast. You check that out indeed later on in the broadcast. We're also going to be talking about several things of more of interest to everybody out there, including how we're going to go ahead and deal with Star Trek. We're going to talk Star Trek Discovery. We're going to talk Ubisoft's latest report as far as to their shareholders and what stuff is coming on the way. And then also as well, we're going to, at the end, pay some respects to someone we lost recently in the music world. I know we don't touch on music enough here on the show, but we should more often, because we lost someone great in the rock music world, and we'll share our thoughts with that as well later in the show. Well, it's going to be another great episode of the PCC Multiverse, and who better to kick things off than another great song from Plasma Z. This is Junkyard Nomads from Plasma Z, and this is the PCC Multiverse. And we're back with the PCC Multiverse. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. If you have any questions to ask us, at all about our show, about what's going on with pop culture, any of the topics that we cover, or you have an idea that you want spoken on the show, or if you think you want to be a guest on the show, no problem. Send us a note, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. We're also always accepting new affiliates to go ahead and put our show on, and also sponsorship deals as well. Very reasonable, very attractive rates. And just, we're the number one show on our Pop Culture Cosmos show on Monday nights, 10:30 p.m., 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network, and also on, over 10 different audio options. So definitely is something good indeed, and it's all because of you folks out there listening to us. So we truly appreciate it indeed. So I want to ask you, Josh, a quick question. I heard and I studied the recent statements from Ubisoft in regard to their shareholders recently, and nothing really came as a surprise, which I guess is pretty much the question I wanted to ask you. They're still continuing to go ahead down the same path with another Far Cry, another Assassin's Creed. This time it's called Origins. And what was the surprising thing, I guess, if anything, is The Crew, which was moderately panned as far as critically, and I guess did okay sales-wise. The Crew is getting a sequel as well. So I ask you, Josh, does Ubisoft as a publisher hold the same weight it once did, say, 6-7 years ago when they were at the top of their game and really giving EA and Activision a run for their money?
No, I don't think so, because with Ubisoft, there's you might notice there's a severe lack of new IPs coming out of them. It's all sequels and DLC, which is fine, but back when Assassin's Creed was new, like that was a new concept. Like people were stoked on that, but they've just been kind of milking that for so long. And I will play the new Assassin's Creed, but I'm not stoked on it. I'm not like, gonna go line up to play it. To me, it's the same problem with the Alien franchise. They have this rich story and they're not going anywhere with it, because they know that the moment they start moving their story forward, it's going to take them one step closer to the end of the story, in which they will no longer be able to make games. So I want to see something new out of Ubisoft. I don't want to see them keep visiting Assassin's Creed, The Crew, Far Cry, or whatever. It's just they're a great developer and they have the potential to make great properties, but they're it's a whole thing. Like all publishers now, all they care about is money and what's going to sell, and it's nobody's taking any chances on anything.
Well, like we talked about in a recent episode about EA, ditching the Mass Effect franchise from the moment that the Mass Effect franchise, it looked like, was.
Did you see too that was Mass Effect Andromeda is actually like the 3rd or 4th top selling game this month? It's still selling a lot. You're muted.
Oh, they're still selling, but they're not selling at the rate that they obviously wanted it to. In order, if it was still selling at #1 status, if it's selling, I don't think it will go. I don't think it will sell 7 to 10 million copies like they were planning on. I know they had talked and projected it out that they would be selling 7 to 10 million copies, and I just don't think it will go anywhere near that. Even though it is, like you said, it's still not a very strong month right now for sales as a whole. Super Mario Kart, for instance, is right around the top seller at what 2.5 million when it's been since it's been released. So if that's your top seller to go by, and Mass Effect Andromeda is somewhere a little bit below that, it's not selling quite as well as they're projecting out because it's supposed to be on so many different platforms now with PS4, Xbox One, and PC. It has a much more opportunity to sell if it was really that good of a game. But getting back to Ubisoft, it's just different. It's just disappointing. There's nothing different that they're showing us. And Assassin's Creed, the only thing that was different was that Assassin's Creed is being maybe now moved to a spring game, in that it was going to be out before March of 2018, which I thought was very interesting, which tells me that they're looking more towards it being a spring game as opposed to their traditional October-November release form. So what does that tell you? Is that like a chink in the armor for the Assassin's Creed franchise as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and the fact that they skipped a year and they're making an Origins game instead of like a main story game, I think that speaks leagues on their confidence in the franchise.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more.
And we're getting to the point where there are so many indie developers, and indie developers are reaching the point where their technology is almost on par with some of these first and second party developers, that pretty soon they're going to take over the industry because they're going to be able to make the games that gamers actually want to play, because these indie devs, they're not run by corporations and people that want money. They're run by gamers, and gamers know what gamers want. So it's one of those things where if these big publishers want to survive, they have to actually start listening to fans and what they want instead of what they think is going to make money. Like Nintendo is run by people, by businessmen. None of them play video games. From what I understand, all the interviews I read, those guys all hate video games. Like, they're bored. They just want, they want to make what's making money. And I think that was the big problem with the Wii and the Wii U that eventually led to their downfall. So, it's just, things got to change. It's just the way the market and the landscape is, and the demand. And pretty soon those big developers might not be around anymore. So it's going to be all indies.
Definitely a great point indeed. What are everyone's thoughts out there on Ubisoft's latest announcements, which pretty much is the same old, same old? Let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com or popculturecosmos and Humanica Media and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. And we're back with the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back with the PCC Multiverse. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. Truly appreciate you being out there listening to us. Again, if you do not get a chance to listen to our shows on the podcast radio network, that's okay. We're on many, 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 many different outlets, including Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, podcast.com, Mixcloud, Overcast.fm, the ESO Network, the Tangibound Network, and the Gunna Geek Network as well. And before I go ahead and start talking some Star Trek, can you name all the Humanica Media outlets that you guys are on for Humanica Media?
Overcast FM, Google Play, Podbean, podcast.com, iTunes, Facebook, YouTube. Did I say Overcast? I'm pretty sure I said that already.
Yes, you did. You can't cheat now.
Mixcloud, I want to say, and I don't know where else. Probably lots of other places if you just Google stuff.
Yes, the ever-present Google. Just Google it. No problem.
Just Google it. Just
Google
the old Google machine.
You'll find it. No problem.
We'll pop up eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Please don't put that in the comments if you're rating us on iTunes. Just hey, they don't care about you. They want you just good for some. We do care about you. That's what I say. If you want to, worst comes to worst, and you cannot find us on any looking out there on the internet, just Google it, Pop Culture Cosmos or Humanican Media, or we're going to be doing a reinterface with our popculturecosmos.wordpress.com site as far as making a page that's easier for you to link up with all of our shows indeed. All right, and we are talking now about Star Trek Discovery, and I know you got a chance to check out the latest Star Trek Discovery trailer that's coming out for the Star Trek Discovery series coming out later this fall from CBS and CBS All Access, which I believe this first episode will still be on CBS from what I remember, and then also as well, all the shows will be on CBS All Access. So I ask you, I kind of like it, the series where it's going. I definitely like the characters that are already involved, already have some affinity for some of them already. I want to ask you, do you think the Star Trek Discovery series can, I'm not saying it will or it won't, can it do the same thing for Star Trek on television that the Star Trek in 2009, J.J. Abrams' great film, did in rebooting the series for the big screen and whatnot? Can Star Trek Discovery do the same thing for television?
Don't hate me for saying this, but no, I don't think so. I don't see this show lasting very long. It looks cool. It has the potential to be cool, but it's on TV, and everything that's on TV is in danger. And a lot of people don't watch TV anymore. So even if it is popular, like wildly popular when it first hits, it's going to be hard to tell who's actually watching, because most people are going to be watching it through their on-demand services, Hulu, Netflix when it hits Netflix. But we're just like, there are other sci-fi shows, like people like Doctor Who and the stuff on BBC and sci-fi. I think the era of space travel shows is over. I think we explored that for a long time, and it'll appeal to audiences who are fans of the original show, but I think they're going to have a really hard time bringing in new viewers, because personally, like I have a hard time, forcing myself to watch the movies, and I do like the movies after I see them, but it's not something that I run out to the theaters to go watch. So with the show, I'm going to wait until you tell me about it before I decide whether or not I'm going to sit down and watch a couple episodes.
Well, I will tell you this, that the Star Trek in 2009 reboot reignited my love for the franchise, because after so many years of not so good Star Trek movies and not really so good Star Trek series, and even worse Star Trek The Next Generation movies, I had been burnt out of the series as a whole. And I think the movies, you liked the latest one more than I did. I definitely liked Into Darkness more than a lot of other people did. But I still think the series itself on the big screen, it has still got plenty of life left in it, and I'm hoping they'll do the next one, which has been rumored to reinstate the Chris Hemsworth character of Kirk's dad and whatnot. But I'm hopeful that this will do well enough to reignite the series as far as a whole on television, and maybe get a new audience from that. I'm surprised it's still going to stay on All Access. I was hoping it would be reinstated onto the cooler heads would prevail and put it on CBS, the actual network. I know one episode will be, but I'm hoping for more at some point in time. But if they've got a commitment from Paramount, and Paramount's got a commitment from CBS to at least air a good chunk of it as far as a full season is concerned and give it a shot? I hope so. Definitely hope so indeed. It looks pretty good. I have no complaints about it so far. I think it's you got some deep backstory there. It takes place 10 years before the events of the reboot series, so I'm definitely looking forward to indeed, because it's still within that same realms that fans newer and older can be familiar with. So I like that indeed.
So they exist on the same timeline? Is that
pretty much 10 years before the events of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy teaming up together? Pretty much the 2009 reboot. So it's 10 years before then. So basically, they're all adults still in that time frame, but they're just not. Kirk hadn't yet joined Starfleet. I'm not sure if Spock had. He may have, or was just going to. And McCoy was still married at that time, most likely. It's still, his marriage was, he was divorced coming out of 2009. So we'll see if they do include any one of those characters anywhere in the series. It would be kind of interesting if they did at that point in time. So definitely looking for me something forward to it indeed. I bet you said the space travel series have been played out. Are you sure does that count for even the Orville from Seth MacFarlane?
See, that confuses me too. I think that because it's comedy based, I don't think it's going to do well in general, but I think because it's comedy based and it's made by the guy that made Family Guy, that people are going to be more likely to watch it because they can relate more to it.
I just don't like Seth MacFarlane, the actual character itself. It reminds me of too much like what's the Western he did that was
oh yeah,
40 million things to do in the West or whatever.
Yeah. He plays the same character.
Yeah.
Except in Hellboy too. He played the guy in the suit. I can't remember what his name was, but yeah, I mean, more or less, he's pretty much the same character all the time. Which is why Family Guy exists, because he's like plays every voice on that show.
And people were trying to relate this to Galaxy Quest. Yeah, Galaxy Quest was a wonderful film because it was pretty much a ripoff of the Star Trek franchise. And it was making fun of the Star Trek franchise throughout the film, yet trying to create its own identity. And I understand the Orville is trying to do somewhat of the same thing, but Seth MacFarlane's character already is, all these other characters seem interesting except for him because it's just him, and it's still the same character he played in 40 Million Ways the West, and I don't know. I'm hoping it does well. I will give it a chance. I want to give it a chance because I'd like to see something like that done on television because I think it's different. Just like Star Trek Discovery being back on television is different. So I'm hopeful again for some great space franchises out there in TV land. They're actually good, not because I can't really get into the stuff on sci-fi because it really does not look like it's up to par. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're right. Like I said, like with these shows,
when I watch The Expanse, whatnot, for even 10 minutes, I just like it's just
they had their time, and that's what worries me about this new Star Trek show is that people aren't really going to give it a chance because there's not a lot of. They'd rather watch like a true crime show or something funny, or on the CW turn on Supernatural or Arrow. They want superheroes. It's the space travel thing's iffy, man, unless it's like Star Wars or like a big screen Star Trek movie.
And these studios are going to have less tolerance because they are most likely having a higher budget than those true crime or reality shows and whatnot. So I guess I can't blame you there. But my hopes is that people and fans will garner themselves and gather around the televisions to watch these shows because I'd like to see some space travel programs, really, really good ones that are back on the air indeed. And let's hope that these are as well. So what are your thoughts on Star Trek Discovery? Reigniting the Star Trek series and franchise back on television, and also the Orville as well. Am I overreacting that Seth MacFarlane is playing the same character that we've seen before? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Animanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. And we're back with the PCC Multiverse. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you listening to us here, and we're going to close out the show tonight, talking about a couple different things. Oh. And we're back with the PCC Multiverse. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you listening to us out there, and we're going to close out the show tonight on a little bit of a little bit more of a somber note. We recently lost someone that was deeply involved in the music world, someone whose voice was definitely original and resonated with a lot of fans indeed. And unfortunately, the untimely death of Chris Cornell from Soundgarden and also Audioslave was truly unfortunate indeed. That he did, and looks like from all appearances, take his own life within the past couple of days. So definitely hurts indeed for all those that not only enjoyed the grunge era, but definitely rock music in general. I personally am a very big fan of Spoon Man. It's one of my all-time favorite songs. Definitely a great song indeed. I listened to it several times earlier today before we came onto the show, and definitely Chris Cornell's mark on the industry, and especially to an era which sometimes gets forgotten. Because I want to talk with you this, Josh. I think the 90s as a whole gets forgotten a lot in as far as the overall history, as far as remembering fondness for it. I know a lot of people still love the 80s, they love the 70s, they love the 60s. Even the 50s seems to have a more fondness than the 90s, and especially the last decade as well. So I ask you, Josh, your thoughts on Chris Cornell's passing. Were you a good fan of Audioslave and Soundgarden, and your thoughts on his mark on rock music and the grunge music scene over the past, over that great 1990s and early 2000s scene?
It's funny that you say like 80s, because I think the 90s is when music really like took off, like as far as bringing in young listeners. I think that the 90s created a type of music that pretty much has become the foundation of a lot of music that's been made since then.
I would kind of disagree with you there. I think the 80s had the decade with the most variance, because it was the end of disco, so you had that all the way to the birth of hip hop and rap, and then obviously you had new wave rock, hair metal bands, and you had all that coming in. The 90s did have its influence and variance, but I don't think you had the type of variances and what was promoted on public radio of a wide spectrum than you did in the 80s. If you lived in the 80s like I did, I think you would understand listening to the radio, where you would hear a Def Leppard play right after Madonna, which played right after Duran Duran, which played right after a Motley Crue, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you had these grunge bands had these epic guitar ballads and power chords, and they created a type of music that told a story. Whereas, like, but Led Zeppelin, I'll give them that. Like, music from the 70s, like it seems like grunge they completely skipped over the 80s, and grunge took stuff from the 70s. Like Pearl Jam originally toured with Neil Young when they were rocking in the free world, and they kind of built upon that era, completely forgetting about the 80s. So I mean, it's a weird thing. I guess it depends on like what era you were kind of into music during.
I'm a big fan of the music of the 90s. That's just what a lot of the music I like is actually from the 90s, even though I grew up in the 80s. I'm going to point back the music I still listen to today. If you looked at the tracks I still listen to, a lot of that is from the 90s as opposed to the 80s.
Right.
But because to me it has a more modern feel than the 80s as a collective whole. There are still songs in the 80s which actually still translate well today, but I think the 90s music for the most part has music that does still translate well into today's audiences. I think if you played a lot of music from the 90s, it would still generate that same kind of enthusiasm in listening audience today, as opposed to songs from the 80s, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just like when you're driving in the car, what are the odds that you would turn off a Pearl Jam or Soundgarden or Candlebox song as opposed to like something modern like Mumford and Sons or whatever? Like you probably let that song play rather than change the station, turn on your iPod or whatever.
And maybe from an artistic value, the '90s were better indeed. But I'm just telling you, I'm just saying from a variant standpoint, where from an inclusiveness as far as every type of format was pretty much inclusive, except for country. Country really didn't hit on the pop scene until the '90s, so I would give you that.
Achy breaky heart, man.
Well, and that's I'm talking about with
I got you.
There's so many. There were so many artists in the country music where that started to break in huge with the pop scene in the '90s, but the '80s pretty much had so many different influences as far as from the front end of the '80s to the back end of the '80s, where you start seeing everything in the middle, where so many different things were being played on general music stations that today don't get played. That's probably because today in top 40 stations, you don't hear rock music for the most part. You don't hear heavier music for the most part.
You hear a lot of folk and pop music
and hip hop and whatnot. And that's fine if that's what the majority of the audience wants. That's not a problem because rock music maybe doesn't resonate as well with millennials and most general audience as much as it did in the '90s and the '80s. That's fine. The '90s, I think, from an artistic value, may be better suited as far as when in critics' hearts, because the music is so much had more meaning then, than the '80s. But I think from an inclusion factor, I think the '80s were probably the most inclusive music decade in the history of rock music, period, from that standpoint. But I just think that maybe the best music was made during the 1990s.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't listen to a lot of '80s, so it's hard for me to debate on this. But I think back to Chris Cornell, though, like I feel like he is more responsible for grunge than Kurt Cobain, because if you listen to a lot of Nirvana's earlier stuff, it's really punk sounding. Like they wanted to sound like the Melvins and the Cranberries, and they wanted to kind of it wasn't until their more mainstream stuff like Nevermind came out and In Utero that they started embracing like that the whole grunge scene. He kind of took like all the punk bands he liked as a kid and like the sounds of bands like Sonic Youth, and he kind of mixed them together, and that birthed grunge music. But after Kurt Cobain, I think that Chris Cornell is he's kind of responsible for propelling the grunge scene forward, because he was the original singer of Pearl Jam. He founded the band, and then he, they had Temple the Dog, which was a hybrid of Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. Then Eddie Vedder came onto the scene, and Chris Cornell just went along with Soundgarden, and they produced some albums. They toured with bands like Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Candlebox, Days of the New, and then time went on, and Chris Cornell, he's one of those musicians who is able to adapt with time. I mean, because if you look at, he had his solo stuff, which may or may not have been good, but then he founded Audio Slave, which was, they were decent. He even did something with Timbaland, but
decent. I thought they kicked some. Well,
they were good. Yeah, looking back on it, like if he hadn't have died, though,
Cochise is an awesome track.
It is. And what was that song, Out of Exile? I love that CD. I can listen to it over and over again. But he was great. Like I know they said that his vocal range can go 5 octaves above a normal person's vocal range, and that is so cool to me. But he doesn't get a lot of credit for his stuff just because, Soundgarden wasn't around for a while and Pearl Jam still is. Smashing Pumpkins. And speaking of Smashing Pumpkins, Billy Corgan, all that guy does is talk trash on other grunge bands. But,
well, he recently purchased a wrestling association, but we won't go into that yet. That's for another day.
Another topic. But anyways, Chris Cornell, like I feel bad because a lot of people like modern, people listening to music nowadays, turn on the radio, they won't get these same experiences that we did. They won't get another like Black by Pearl Jam, another Spoon Man by Audio Slave, or not Audio Slave, but Soundgarden. They won't get to hear a lot of the good like epic guitar ballads that we got and it makes me sad, especially since Chris Cornell passing. I noticed a lot of kids on like my newsfeed that I know now, nobody under the age of 25 said anything about Chris Cornell, which is weird because they're all the ones that are saying, oh, I watched 13 Shades of Grey, so I can emphasize now with people who want to kill themselves. Not one of them said a single thing about Chris Cornell.
You mean 13 Reasons Why?
13 Reasons Why. What? 13 Shades of Grey. Okay, never mind.
13 Shades of Grey would take you into a different realm. That's all I will say about that.
But yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Well, it just, like I said, the 90s from an artistic value, I think was just superior to any other decade, maybe outside of the 60s, but whatnot. I think the all-inclusiveness, I think I would give to the 80s, but definitely the 90s from an artistic value is definitely something that people should take a listen to. In fact, Sirius XM has stations that are devoted to each and every decade, so you might want to listen to that and get a good idea for yourself. But before we say that, what are your thoughts out there on which music decade that you enjoy best? Let us know your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Plus, if you want to send us thoughts on Chris Cornell and his mark in the industry, do that as well. Also, Game Source, Humanica Media, and Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook and Twitter as well. And once again, we want to pay our respects with just a moment of silence for the late Chris Cornell. And we truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. We didn't want to end it on a somber note like that, but we wanted to make sure we made definitely our thoughts and with his family, and definitely wanted to make sure everybody knows out there our deep love for the music scene as well here at Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source as well.
And if you truly want to experience Chris Cornell, listen to Hunger Strike by Temple of a Dog. Listen to the entire CD. Just start from the first track and go all the way to the end track, and you will truly experience the greatness of Chris Cornell.
There are those words of Josh Pederson, indeed, from Humanica Media. So there's a lot of great things coming up from Humanica Media. What about this? Super BS Gamescast and Topicocalypse, indeed. So for Josh Pederson, this is Gerald Glassford. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being part of the PCC Multiverse. It's another beautiful day here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening, and here's hoping you have yourself a great day.